Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello, I'm Matt Hansen.
And I'm Lee Hutchison.
And welcome to the Filibuster.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us this week on the Filibuster. It is 2 days before Halloween as we record this. It will be after Halloween when you hear this, but that's pretty immaterial. Lee and I love the Halloween season, so for this Filibuster, we thought we'd not only talk about some scary films, as most people are wont to do during the Halloween festivities, but we thought we'd specifically talk about our top 5 underrated horror films, or underrated in our opinion anyway. So this should be interesting. You ready for this, Lee?
Yeah, I'm very excited about my list. I can already imagine the accusations I'm going to get when I start going through some of this list. It should be known that I don't know what Matt's picked. He doesn't know what I've picked. So there's an excitement around what he's going to have picked and what I've picked. I'm really curious to hear what he's chosen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to hear what you've chosen, given that intro. So without further ado, why don't you start us off, Lee? What's your first pick?
Yep, my first pick is The Skin I Live In, Pedro Almodóvar's Spanish movie from 2011. This is one of the most terrifying movies I've ever seen, and it's famously called a horror movie without any scares or frights. To give you a kind of vague plot, because I really feel what almost makes it truly horrifying is really in the kind of the reveal. But Antonio Banderas plays like a mysterious scientist that is living in this mansion house with this mysterious girl that's trapped in this kind of wide open space within this mansion. He's only got one maid on staff, and he loves to kind of experiment on this girl. What he's developed is kind of a skin issue, sort of magical, it's hard to describe, but sort of a skin technique that means that people that are kind of victims of burns or anything like that would never be affected by it again. But all is not as it seems, as he starts to have flashbacks to a horrific night on his wedding when he discovered his daughter had been raped and was drugged. During this time, she just loses all trust in men and has to go to a mental home. In that period of time, we discover that she has lost all faith in men, and she eventually kills herself. So Antonio Banderas is a tortured man, and he seeks out the individual that raped his daughter. And I'm going to say here, you know, a spoiler warning for the next kind of minute as I kind of reveal what truly makes this movie horrific. Antonio Banderas hunts down the individual that raped his daughter and begins a transformation of kidnapping this young male, and he begins to transform his body into that of a female that looks almost exactly like his daughter. Over 6 years of psychological torment on this male, and he begins a relationship with this kind of former male by this point. This psychological damage, the revelation that this female character is actually a male rapist. It's just mind-blowing. It's shocking, it's horrifying, it's body horror. It's one of these kind of underrated horror movies in terms of just pure psychological terror. I remembered watching the movie for the first time, and as you start to click, like, oh my god, Jesus, like, they've done this. This is what the whole kind of mysterious plot is all leading to. It's genuinely one of the most shocking, horrifying, but brilliant movies of the past few years, in my humble opinion.
Wow. That is quite the description. I feel a little bit low class compared to yours when I'm looking at my list, because I mean, judging from that, you pick some like high concept, like really like psychological thrillers, and I pick some like, you know, fun slashers and stuff from the 80s that I think are overlooked.
That's why people tune in. They love to hear the differences of opinion. I mean, just this entire movie for me was, I kind of if you kind of see the trailer, it's all very kind of mysterious. You think, you're kind of glued in. You would never kind of think of it as this kind of movie that would be like a horror. It's more of a mystery in the kind of the trailer. The film itself is very intense. It's got a lot of the European kind of tropes in terms of how it deals with sex, violence, and so many powerful issues. And the way it deals with it is this mysterious film that continues to kind of unravel, that we see the past that the Doctor is dealing with and what's going on in the current day, as we've tried to kind of find out who this mysterious woman in the mansion is. And as I say, I'll never forget the moment it kind of clicked into gear and the emotions that it evoked. And so many times we go to cinema, the emotions that are evoked are kind of pleasure, enjoyment, sometimes frustration. But this one was pure shock and terror and horror. And as you try to get yourself around that, what it must be like for someone to have been kidnapped for 6 years, to be psychologically tormented, to have their body like completely changed, their sexual organs turned inside out, to believe by the end that they are actually a woman. And it's one of these amazing kind of genre pieces, and body horror is something we associate so much with horror movies, and this really does it in a very human and very powerful way. And it's hopefully it's, obviously I've kind of spoiled what the movie is. I don't know how many people out there would have maybe gone and seen it anyway, but to kind of describe what makes this such an underrated horror, you really have to describe the end. And it truly is a powerful movie. It's not for people with a weak stomach, because you really are dealing with some horrific stuff, rape, psychological torment, but it is all done in a dignified way. It's not done in an exploitative manner. It truly is one of the best European films I've seen kind of ever, I would say.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. I mean, I do remember hearing that title bandied about when it first came out, but I had no idea what it was about. I actually might check that out. On that note, let me bring down the class level of this podcast with some of my entries. So if anyone's heard me on this show, they know that I'm a big fan of horror movies, and specifically the 70s and 80s stuff. And if you've heard me on any show where I talk about horror movies, you know that one of my favorite horror movies of all time is the original Halloween. It's something that I love watching every October, especially around this time of year. I usually am watching it on Halloween night as I'm passing out candy, because I'm a homebody, so that's what I end up staying on doing. But I also pair it with its lesser regarded, but I think equally deserving of your time, 1981 sequel, Halloween 2. That's my first entry on this list. And the reason I put it as underrated is that I think that a lot of people compare it to the classic, and I know it's not as good as the first one, but what I really like about it is it's something that horror movies don't typically do these days anymore, I don't think. Halloween 2 actually opens and takes place on the same night as the first one. If you've ever seen the original Halloween, you know it ends with Donald Pleasance's character shooting Michael Myers out of the balcony window, and then him looking out and finding that the body's gone. Halloween 2 picks up from the time it takes him to go from the upstairs portion of that house down the stairs. So it's literally 3 seconds later. So the thing that I like about it, and the thing that I think is really cool, is that the first two movies are really like part 1 and part 2 of a TV show. Takes place same night, same characters, and the thing that I find interesting about it too is that the original was directed by John Carpenter, who's one of my favorite horror directors of all time. He didn't direct the second one, but he produced it, and he wrote it. So I mean, it's not as good as the first one, because what sequel usually is, right? But his atmosphere and his hand are still very much present. So I think it gives the movie a better vibe with him there than some of the other sequels would later. So the atmosphere is still there, the characters are still pretty much intact, and it's a continuation of the same night. And that's for me, I've seen a lot of horror movies and a lot of sequels, and I've not seen one that basically picks the story up on the same day and keeps running with it. So I think it makes it kind of cool. And like I said, it's just a fun little thing. Don't expect the high concept stuff that Lee was talking about, because it's you have to know what you're getting. It's an 80s slasher. But I find it fun. I usually pair that with the first one on Halloween night.
Don't hurt me here. I'm glad we've got an ocean separating us, but I've only ever seen one of the Halloween movies, and that was the Halloween 3 at like an all-night horror madness event. I've never watched any of the Halloween movies. Not Halloween 1, not Halloween 2, not Halloween H2O, not Halloween probably in space. Sorry?
No, they haven't gotten there yet. I mean, they're not for everybody. I definitely recommend the first one. I think that once you get past the 70s-ness of it, it's really a quite good film that utilizes atmosphere and music and suspense really well. But, I mean, that's really... So you've only seen the third one. Well, the third one that has nothing to do with any of the rest of the films.
It's just one of those things, like... I've been listening to all these kind of Shocktober horror podcasts and discussions, and like I'm next to kind of not really into much in the way of traditional horror, not in a pretentious way. It's just a genre that kind of doesn't do overly much for me, and I like movies like The Thing, and it's just not one I've kind of a genre I ever feel kind of like I want to dive into or kind of switch on, and it's probably the least represented in my kind of movie collection, not through any kind of form of snobbery or anything, but I enjoy my horror all-night madness events, but I just struggle to find the time to probably sit down and watch them over other things.
No, I mean, like I said, it's an acquired taste genre, but if you're ever gonna like dip your toe into that territory, I say definitely go with the first one, and if you end up liking the first one, the second one is pretty good too. So that's why it ends up on my list.
Well, it's time to give you my second one, Lars von Trier's Melancholia. The second part of the unofficial Depression trilogy opens with Antichrist, then it's Melancholia, then it's Nymphomaniac. Melancholia is not a traditional horror, and I'm probably going to say that for every single one of these movies apart from one. Melancholia is a movie about the end of the world, and I can't imagine anything more horrifying than that. The movie is a movie that's built into two parts. It really is about the power of depression and taking control of it or being a slave to it. I mean, thankfully, I've never been touched by depression, and I hope that is never the case. But I think the way Lars von Trier, a historic manic depressive, represents depression on screen is something that I know from friends that have been touched by it is represented really well. The movie's split into two parts. The first part of the plot is Kirsten Dunst is Justine. She's suffering from depression. She's getting married to the belle of the ball, Alexander Skarsgård, but she's under pressure from all her family, her sister Claire, her dad, Dexter, played by John Hurt, Kiefer Sutherland, her brother-in-law. All these people are putting pressure on her. Her workmates are putting pressure on her, and she's trying to stay strong. She's trying to be in control. Her sister really is the dominant force here on this wedding night, and ultimately the wedding ends in a total disaster, and her husband, Michael, of only a few hours, walks out on her. It's a fascinating movie as we see this woman's depression just really take hold on her wedding day. And for me, that's never suffered from depression. That in itself is horrifying to see the power it can have and how it can destroy and affect lives so powerfully and those around us. But the second part of the movie is where it really becomes so horrifying for me, that a planet has just appeared. I'm sure the science of this movie is totally out of whack, and begins a near miss of planet Earth. This whole movie just takes place in a mansion setting, and we see that this planet is just going to come very close towards Earth. People are terrified. Is this going to be the end of the world? And we see people like Claire, Justine's sister, who was so in control in the first part, succumb to the fear that is the world going to end. Her husband John, a proud man, starts to fall apart as the science that he truly believes in starts to disappear. And Justine, as this world is ending, the character that's suffering from depression, becomes very powerful. She owns that fear, and people becoming scared of how powerful she becomes in this face of the end of the world. And it truly is a movie that I find just terrifying, of how depression can take hold. The idea of the world ending and not being able to kind of call upon science to save us, to not have our family around us be able to help us. I mean, that's terrifying. For me, as someone that loves control and being able to kind of take charge of my own life and the world around me, the idea of losing that and potentially things being taken away is just so scary. And Melancholia, for how it represents depression, the end of the world, power, control, the loss of family, I think is horrifying. But it's wonderfully beautiful at the same time. The movie is soundtracked by the Tristan and Isolde score, and it's one of the most beautiful movies about the end of the world you'll ever see.
It sounds really depressing, though. I mean, like, I guess that's the point, given that it's called Melancholia and it's about depression. But wow, I mean, you like heavy stuff.
Yeah, like if the movies like this that I can just throw myself into, and like, while I enjoy movies like, I saw Doctor Strange this week, I really enjoyed it. I can have a blather about it. Something like Melancholia, and I was saying it to Tristan, I'd love to have an episode where we talk about Lars von Trier. And Melancholia is a movie that I'm going to be on my best behavior. I'm only going to talk about it for just a couple minutes. I could talk about this movie for so much. I think it's such a powerful movie. It's one of the most beautiful movies that's ever been shot. Kirsten Dunst is incredible in this role, and Charlotte Gainsbourg is one of my favourite actresses. I think she's just stunning. Lars von Trier, is a provocative director. He says things that can shock and offend, but boy, he can make some beautiful and powerful movies, and this is one of them.
Yeah, from what I understand, he's an acquired taste.
Absolutely. He's not for the faint of heart, either at press conferences or in the cinema.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to be chomping at the bit to see that one. There's the Almodovar one, but I'll take your word for it, Lee.
That's all I can ask.
So, returning back to low-class 70s land. Well, I hate saying that because I love these movies. I don't think they're low-class. But I'm going to stick with Carpenter for right now, and I'm going to go with his follow-up movie from Halloween, which was The Fog in 1979. And basically, the synopsis that I can shove into a 30-second plug is that The Fog takes place on a small coastal town on California that is celebrating its 100-year anniversary of its foundation. And as the events unfold, the story of how this town came to be comes into the limelight. This town was basically founded off of the intentional murder of a bunch of lepers who were trying to settle this colony, but the people who were already there intentionally sank their ship on the way here. So they all die, and 100 years later, this mysterious fog that was present at the time that they die allows their ghostly forms to come back and wreak havoc on the town. That's basically the long and short of it. And what I like about this, and it kind of exemplifies what I like about Carpenter the best, because like I said, I'm a huge fan of his. And except for movies like The Thing, where I think it's a brilliant movie, but he did focus a lot on the creature effects and the gore in that. Most of his movies, when he first started out, including Halloween and including this one, the focus is not on gore. The focus is on creating a creepy atmosphere, and that's done with lighting, with camera shots, with music. I like to me, horror films don't live and die on gore, and they don't even necessarily live and die on twist endings, although certain twist endings I think can be brilliant. For me, what horror movies live and die on are atmosphere, and if you can create a good sense of atmosphere, I'm usually on board to watch any kind of horror movie. And I feel like the 70s were the best time for that sort of thing. I mean, I just last night I was at a friend's house and rewatching The Exorcist, and it's a movie I hadn't seen in a while. And that movie is really slow paced, but the atmosphere and the suspense that it builds up sustains that movie's slow build. And I think it's the same thing here with The Fog. There's not a lot of gore. In fact, I think there's no gore. It really, like, if it came out today, I think it would be PG-13. But the cast really works. You've got Jamie Lee Curtis, Adrienne Barbeau, Janet Leigh, Hal Holbrook, just a bunch of great actors that are cast perfectly for the roles that they play. And yeah, I just really have a lot of fun with this one, and it has a lot to do with atmosphere, created through camera choices, lighting, music, that sort of thing.
I have not seen this one either. To sum it up even perfectly, I've seen so little John Carpenter movies that nearly every one of the film geeks that I knew in Edinburgh went to see John Carpenter live performing music from his soundtracks and everything this week, except me. I really need to dive into John Carpenter more than I have, and these are all movies like Halloween, this one, that I need to get into.
See, I'm not going to be mad at you too much, but that kills me. I would give my left testicle to go to a John Carpenter concert. I'm that big of a fan.
Yeah, I it was one of those ones I was going to go, but the price was very high, and being so kind of ignorant of a lot of his work, I know him, I appreciate him. It felt like I just couldn't justify the cost with so many events coming up. So I did feel very bad. But these are things I'm going to have to just get into, sit down one weekend and have a Shocktober in January or something.
Yeah, you will. But that was me, I've checked to see if he ever tours near me, and he's never come. But for me, money would be no object.
So now my third movie, and this is another movie where it's not a traditional horror, but what it evokes and what it shows is pure horror, and that's Paul Greengrass's United 93. The United 93 movie is basically a real-time representation of the takeoff, the hijacking, and the crashing of Flight 93 on September 11th. I'll never forget kind of September 11th, like anyone of our generation and beyond. I got back from school and watched it all unfold on TV. I don't think I switched off the news for days when I would get home from school, and it was just so horrifying. And then I remembered, I think I always remember people saying around that time, it's just like a movie. It doesn't seem real. And 9/11 has been very rarely represented at all in cinema, directly, apart from around the time of United 93 and the World Trade Center. So these two movies are really pretty much the only movies that kind of represent that day. And while World Trade Center by Oliver Stone is a fine enough movie, World Trade Center is one of the best movies of all time, one of the best movies of this, millennium. It is a beautiful tribute to the heroic acts that people took that day. It is, it doesn't shy away from the horror that would have been experienced there. And while I always say it, that the movies that terrify me and horrify me the most aren't the ones with the zombies or the possessed creatures. It's what humans can do to other humans. And I think United 93 is just a stunning representation of the horror that humans can inflict upon others. And watching something like this it's got all that kind of tropes of horror. It's suffocating, it's terrifying. And as I watch this movie every time, I find it so uncomfortable to watch as it unfolds in the real time, as people make life or death decisions that they know they're going to go to their doom, but they know it's the right thing to do, and the emotions that evoke and the horror of what these hijackers do on the plane, want to do, and is unfolding around them. It's truly a suffocating movie, and it never flinches away as the plane spirals into the ground in the final few seconds. You're just stunned into a kind of a numbness that takes you back to the horror of watching on our TV or hearing from family and friends on that day. And it's a brilliantly edited, brilliantly shot tribute to those heroic people that day on that plane and that gave their lives. And I can't think of a more horrifying experience than knowing you're going to your doom, even if you know you're giving one of the biggest sacrifices you can make. Watching it unfold is horrifying, and I think very few horror movies could ever come close to capturing what this movie does.
It is a very well made movie. I just love how you're like just bringing down the house atmosphere, Lee, with all of your choices. But no, it is horrific, and it's horrific in a different way. I do. That's what I like about your list, is that you're going for like the non-traditional horror. I'll definitely have to give that one a watch when I'm feeling depressed about life.
I think that sums up all my choices to date.
The next choice on my list is actually the movie that spawned this conversation between me and Lee last night. Definitely underrated, and y'all might be shocked for me having it on this list, but I'm telling you, it deserves your time. Believe me, it does. And this is 1983's Psycho 2. Yes, Psycho 2. There is a sequel to Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. There is, in fact, 3 of them. But 2 is the one that's really worth your time. Does it fall into certain 80s slasher tropes? Yes. But what I think is really interesting about this movie is that it does not, and I'm trying not to spoil it because there are twists to this movie. It does not follow what you would think a sequel to Psycho would be. And what I mean by that is the movie plays with you throughout the course of its runtime. Because, I mean, Lee, I would imagine anyone would expect the sequel to Psycho to be Anthony Perkins gets released from the hospital and then just starts up old habits again. That would be the easy way to go. That's not this movie. This movie plays with you the whole runtime in that it looks like someone or something is trying to, when he gets released from the hospital, because that does happen in this movie. He gets released after 22 years because he's been quote unquote restored to sanity. Someone or something throughout the course of this movie is leaving him notes and messages around the old house, and it's all the same sets, it's the same motel, it's the same house. Someone is leaving him notes and messages and calling him, pretending to be his mother, trying to drive him crazy again. And at the same time, these murders start happening again. So the whole movie is just a mind game. Like, is he really going crazy again? Is he really committing these murders? Or is someone trying to frame him? And that's the basis of this whole movie. It is not he just starts up again. And I really thought that was an interesting way to go. It is not the predictable way. And the performances, because like when you get some of these slasher films, they can be fun, but you have to excuse some of the performances. Not in this film. I mean, because you do get Anthony Perkins back, and even though it's 22, 23 years after the first movie, he hasn't lost the character. In fact, he's brilliant in this, and like I feel like you never think after you find out that he's doing the murders in the first one that you could feel sympathy for a character like that again, but they do a really good job of building up sympathy for Norman Bates. The camera work is fantastic. The director here is a guy named Richard Franklin, who apparently was a student and an aide for Hitchcock in some of his later films. And so I wouldn't say that the film feels like an imitation, but he does know Hitchcock's camera techniques and methods, and so it's shot really well, it's acted beautifully, and the story is really not what you think it is. Now, I will say the ending is not very good, but like if you can watch up to like the 95% of the movie is fantastic. It's that last 10 minutes that kind of like takes an extra twist that I think is really not necessary and kind of brings it down a bit, but overall, like it's an exercise of like one of the most interesting slasher sequels I've ever seen. And maybe I've kind of built it up too much, but like I said, it's just I applaud it for its non-predictability. So I think it's interesting.
I think this is a film that me and you have spoke about since our first days of podcasting. We're going to do a special one day on Psycho 2. We just need to get it in the books. It's going to happen one day. We will definitely make sure of that.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what you say, because, you know, it's entirely possible people go out and watch this movie after this recommendation and just kind of dismiss it. But like I said, I just find it fascinating that this is the way that they went. And I think it's a lot more, dare I say, artful and daring than your typical slasher sequel.
Absolutely. I think you've made a compelling case for people to give Psycho 2 a chance. I'm sure most people dismiss it as probably, oh, it's another sequel, horror schlock or something like that. I think you made a compelling case for people to seek it out.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, here's my fourth choice. And once again, it's a bit of a more kind of tenuous horror movie. It's a movie from 2011 called Margin Call. I don't know if you're familiar with this one, Matt.
Is this the one with the stock crisis? Is this the Zachary Quinto and Paul Bettany and Demi Moore?
That's exactly what it is. Yes. Yeah. Made for $3.5 million with a cast like Kevin Spacey, Paul Bettany, Jeremy Irons, Zachary Quinto, Stanley Tucci, Demi Moore, Simon Baker. That should be enough to get anyone in.
I did see this one. I'll preface it that way. I remember enjoying it, but I remember not knowing what they were talking about half the time because it's like, I don't get financial stuff.
For people that haven't seen this, this is a 2011 movie produced by Zachary Quinto and directed by J.C. Chandler. It's called Margin Call, and it's set over a 36-hour period just before the financial crash of 2007 and 8. And what happens is Zachary Quinto is just a kind of new guy in one of these financial buildings in New York. It could be Goldman Sachs, it could be the Bank of America, any one of them. And a bunch of staff are kind of laid off in the morning, and one of them gives him a USB stick and goes, I just want you to have a look over some of my numbers. And Zachary Quinto is a rocket scientist working for a bank. He also is a rocket scientist in space in Star Trek, but that's neither here nor there. And he does the maths, and he discovers that basically the financial market that he works for is on the abyss, and this company has been trading on complete falsehoods. What is kind of going on? Even I struggle to kind of explain it, but we all know what happened in 2007 and 8 with the kind of housing market, with all these dodgy loans. So Zachary Quinto brings it to his bosses, who are equally stunned. And what kind of unfolds really in this movie is a bunch of who you would hope would be the smartest people in the room. These smart bankers, investors, hedge fund managers, and they don't have a clue what to do. And they're all coming together to try and work through what are these sums telling us? And they come to the conclusion that their business is about to go down the pan. And the decision they make is that first thing in the morning when the bank's open, they are going to start selling everything. As far as they're aware, the business is toxic, and they are going to try and flush everything out, sell it off to other banks, completely destroying their stockholders, working Americans, people around the world, and it is going to be the start of what will be the financial collapse. Once this bank goes down, another will go, another will go. They decide they're just going to flush everything out, and that they'd rather be first than last. And why I think this is a brilliant horror movie is that it shows that we're looking in a period now, and we hear it, especially during the American election. People don't have faith in the pillars of society anymore. The local bank, the local governments. We always used to probably think of them when we were younger, kind of in the 70s, 60s, all these kind of eras as they can do no wrong. That you put your money in the bank and it's safe. The banker is one of the most trustable people you go. And you watch this movie, and these intelligent people, these billionaires that work in that industry, they don't have a clue. They've just traded falsely, wrongly, ignorantly, and they decide that they want to make sure that they are well looked after and that they are not going to bear the brunt of this financial clash. They're going to get their end sorted first, and America, the world, and the working class people can deal with it after. It's a brilliantly acted movie, and watching these people come to the decisions, deciding whether they're going to be on board with this decision to flush all their stocks and shares and all the kind of baggage that the company holds is so wonderfully taught, that people are talking in marketing terms, business terms, but the dialogue is so gripping, it clicks, and the actors sell it so well. There's a line that keeps getting repeated in this movie by Jeremy Irons in particular. explain this to me as if I'm the dumbest guy in the room. So even though it is a movie that is dealing with kind of very technical banking terms, it always finds a way to break it down and make it congruent to kind of even the dumbest person in the room. And I really think people will find this a really interesting and fascinating movie. And it's one I found myself watching a couple times a year, and it's definitely become a staple of my yearly viewing, so I can't recommend it highly enough.
I do remember liking it. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember going to see it based on just the cast alone and leaving with a pretty good vibe. I remember there being a few surprises in there. Like, I think it's at the very end. I think it's Kevin Spacey's wife, but it's President Roslin from Battlestar Galactica shows up, and I was like, oh, that's a nice ending cherry to have.
Yeah, she's only in it for like 30 seconds. I remember hearing, Mary McDonnell's in this. Oh, that's brilliant. Wait, where's Mary McDonnell? There she is in the last scene. It's a hell of a cast. And yeah, you may think, oh, do I really want to watch a movie about the banking crisis? Trust me, this is one of the best. It's almost the total opposite to, say, something like Wolf of Wall Street, where it's all about the glamour. This is all about the technical side of it.
You know, I'm thinking about this movie now. I think if you wanted a movie about the banking crisis, they could it makes a great double feature with The Big Short.
Yes, absolutely. The two of I think I said that kind of earlier in the year as well. Those two movies really sum up the banking crisis so well, and the people behind it. And that's horrifying to us, that these people that are at the top of the chain, at the top of the boards, that are getting all this big bucks, they don't have a clue how it works. Like, our fate as a nation, as a people, our money in the bank is basically kind of hedged on idiots that don't have a clue what's going on. That's horrifying.
Not only do they not have a clue that's going on, but they will sacrifice you before they sacrifice themselves.
Oh, definitely. And is that any different from Freddy, Jason, any horror character? Absolutely not.
I like your logic.
Thank you.
It's quite fascinating. So my next movie, second to last on my list, is a movie from 1974. I believe it's a Canadian-made movie, but it's a slasher movie that I think it predates Halloween, and I think it's kind of sets the tone for a lot of the slashers that came in the later 70s and 80s films. But I think it does so with a bit more class, and that is Black Christmas. It's got an interesting cast of people that you don't normally think of when it comes to horror movies. The main girl in it is Olivia Hussey, who you may or may not know from the 1968's version of Romeo and Juliet. It's also got Keir Dullea from 2001: A Space Odyssey, Margot Kidder, believe it or not, and someone who you may not know off the top of your head by name, but Andrea Martin. She's normally known for comedy, and she actually played the first incarnation of Quark's mother on Deep Space Nine, and she's in a bunch of comedies now. She's in My Big Fat Greek Wedding. She's like a person who, if you saw the face, you would know who she is. But she plays one of the sorority girls in this film, and basically, I mean, the plot of it is your typical slasher setup, where it's during the holiday season. Some crazy guy ends up in the attic of a sorority house, and I'm guessing from most of the accents and dialect in the film, it's somewhere in Canada, and mayhem ensues. But again, what I've been saying about The Fog and other films like this is atmosphere, and the director of this is someone who normally isn't associated with something like this. I mean, the director is Bob Clark, and that name may not mean anything to you, but if you've ever seen A Christmas Story, that one movie about the kid who wants the BB gun for Christmas, same director. So not only did he make one of the most beloved children's films of all time that has to do with Christmas, he made this like really intense. It's a slasher, but it plays less like a slasher and more like a psychological not psychological, but like a thriller. There's some. I'm struggling to think if there was any gore. I don't think it was that gory, but people at this house start going missing over the course of a couple of nights, and I'll go ahead and say this because people may or may not want to seek out this movie. It's kind of obscure, but you never find out who's doing it in the end. There's a bunch of red herrings, but you never find out at the end. And throughout the course of the movie, the guy will call, because I think there's like a couple of phone systems in the house, so it's one of those, the calls are coming from inside the house movies. But he'll call these girls, and it's really like, it's some of the most bizarre like stuff you've ever heard, because I think they combined a bunch of noises and a bunch of voices, and it's really, really unsettling. Like I said, it plays more like a thriller than your typical slasher. And so I think that went a long way to setting up atmosphere. The music's really good. The lighting is really good. It's really overlooked in setting up that genre of film, but it does it in a really, really classy way. So I don't recommend it to everybody, because, like I said, it's a very acquired taste of films. But if you have any inkling of wanting to see one of these films done right, I would seek this movie out. I think it's very, very overlooked and underrated. That's why it's near the top of my list.
An excellent recommendation again. It's another movie I've not seen, and you've made a good pitch to me to check it out. So with that title, I might just watch it around Christmas time with a double bill with Die Hard. Make
sure you're getting the original 1974 version. There was a remake in 2006. Avoid at all costs.
Noted. You hear that as well, listeners? Take note. Well, my final one is a bit more of a traditional horror. Oh, well, a bit more. It's Ben Wheatley who did High Rise, and his second movie, Kill List. This was also released in 2011 and is one of the most uncomfortable experiences I've ever had in the cinema. I go to the cinema and I want to enjoy the movies. I want to have things evoked in me. And I remember seeing this trailer for the first time thinking, wait, this is it. Like, it hooks you in. It's very mysterious, some interesting imagery, the music, the score, everything about it is just really quite curious, and you're like, what's going on here? It grips you straight away. So I went to see this movie, and I think I fidgeted in my seat the whole day on opening night. I was so uncomfortable. I was so tense. The plot of the movie is these two assassins are hired in Britain. They've been seeked out by a client who's got a kill list of several individuals that he wants assassinated. There's a librarian, a member of parliament. He wants them taken out. So these guys are sent on a hit. They've suffered real stress and anxiety. They've been out in Iraq fighting, and they're doing this for the money. So they go through the hits, but everything, it's almost like the people that are being targeted know that these guys are coming. So there's a constant air of, what is going on here? What is the real motive behind them being hired? And we go down this rabbit hole of information of what is going on here. All these people are telling them little bits of information like, I'm really glad it's you that's come to kill me. And as they try and get out of it when everything starts to become too uncomfortable for them, but no, they're stuck in it. And I don't want to go anywhere near the ending, but it is one of the most shocking and horrifying endings of any movie I've ever seen. You'll be in shock when you get to the end of it. And it's a movie that you watch, and it starts off very traditional, this hitman, kitchen sink horror, and by the end you're like, wait, where is this kind of going? It almost goes down a Wicker Man kind of line, and you kind of go with it, you can debate it, there's so much to get out of Kill List. And this is a movie that I was debating, going for maybe something that's a bit more out there, a bit more tenuously linked to kind of horror, but I thought this is a movie that I think is a brilliant advert of British cinema. And I know High Rise divided opinions, say, between me and Tristan, but I think if you're a fan of horror, thrillers, tension, of British cinema, Kill List is a brilliant example of it done so well. And I guarantee people will never forget that ending. The sound design has you feeling so uncomfortable throughout. You're sitting in your seat and you're just kind of moving around, fidgeting. You feel so uncomfortable. The violence is unflinching. It's everything that people want from a traditional horror, a traditional thriller, British cinema. and I think Ben Wheatley's it's his best work to date, and he will always be guaranteed my money at the box office based on this movie alone. I think it's incredible, and please seek out if you've not. This is you're flying the flag for British cinema. I like to do once an episode at least. Kill List. Please go see it, people.
You've sold me. I definitely am going to check that out. Yeah, that sounds fascinating. I'm really curious now to see what that ending is.
Yeah, I know one day I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night and it'll be late your night and I'm going to get a message going, holy hell, what was the ending? And me and you'll probably have a debate in the early hours of the morning about it all. I don't want to spoil it. Please, people, anyone, go see this movie.
I'm looking forward to it. All right, I'm going to cap off this with a movie that I know you've probably seen, and I think you like, so you might be able to chime in on this one. It's a movie that sometimes I think people don't regard it as much as its original version, but it's sacrilegious to say this, but I actually prefer this version, and that is Red Dragon from 2002.
Ah, yes, I do think this is a very underrated movie, actually. Yeah, I totally agree with you there. Yeah, good choice.
So yeah, not a bad choice to cap it off on, huh? I mean, like it's not it's like your Silence of the Lambs horror, so it's not like your traditional horror like I've been talking about. But a lot of people prefer the Michael Mann the Manhunter, and I think it's a good movie. But I mean, for whatever reason, I prefer the performances in Red Dragon. I think Anthony Hopkins is always great as Hannibal Lecter. It's nice to see him a bit more restrained in this compared to the Hannibal, which he had just done the year prior. It was great to go back to that. It was a lot more Silence of the Lambs vibe. I think Edward Norton is always great. He's an actor that I just enjoy watching. But really, the star of the show is Ray Fiennes as Francis Dolarhyde. I think he gives an amazing, nuanced performance where, that he's crazy, but the movie does a great job of building up sympathy for this character, and so I just think it's done incredibly well. I think it's people don't like Brett Ratner, the director, when compared to someone like an auteur like Michael Mann, but I really think it's a well done movie. I will stick my neck up for it all the time. In fact, it's been a while since I've seen it. I may go back to see it again soon.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the direction is pretty uninspiring, but yeah. I think one of the best things about this movie is the soundtrack, Danny Elfman. Mm-hmm. I remembered watching this the first time, and it's got traditional opening credits, and I remember being hooked in straight away by this score from Danny Elfman, and we see the images of what's been going on in the Hannibal Lecter case. I think Ray Fiennes is amazing in this movie. What do you see? And it's just, it's a very underrated movie, and I think it's almost kind of like Manhunter was a movie that was very underrated, and then it came into kind of being much more accepted and spoken about positively, really kind of in the past 10 or so years. And I think people overlook Red Dragon, especially compared to, say, Silence of the Lambs. I mean, I certainly think Red Dragon's better than Hannibal. I mean, that doesn't say much, but I still think Red Dragon it's got a brilliant cast: Philip Seymour Hoffman, Emily Blunt, Ray Fiennes, Anthony Hopkins. It may not have the most visually interesting flair, but I think the performances really make it stand out. Yeah, I mean, it's a film that I think people need to go back and give another chance to, because like I said, you're right, the direction is pretty uninspiring, because Brett Ratner's not an auteur like Michael Mann is, and I fully acknowledge that, but the performances are really what carries this movie, and I think that it definitely deserves another look. Yeah, and hopefully people will give this movie another look, or check out a lot of these movies we've recommended for the first time, the second time. I think we've given people a lot to go home and check out. Yeah, so we hope you had a good Halloween season. Just because the Halloween season's over doesn't mean you have to stop watching horror movies or scary things, of course. But we wanted to do something in the vein of that for these last couple of days before Halloween. So Lee, where can people reach you? Yeah, you can find me at Lee_Nostromo on Twitter. You can tell me if these my films are the most tenuously linked. I can imagine John Mills is already writing a WTF tweet to me as soon as he gets to the end of this episode. Oh, he's already hating us for Red Dragon, saying we like. I think so.
saying we like it over Manhunter. But yeah, you can find me for, praise or abuse at mhansen0207, HANSEN. Thank you so much for joining us for this underrated horror movies special of the Filibuster in preparation for Halloween. So until next time, remember that it's Halloween and everyone is entitled to one good scare.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.